One day, a young couple came to a primitive forest park for a trip. They had only walked a few steps when they reached a fork in the path. While they were hesitating about which way to go, a woman pulling a cart of goods walked over. Ida asked if they needed any help. After learning that they were not from the area, Ida warmly recommended a place called Forest Falls. She said the scenery there was beautiful, with a stunning waterfall. Her description immediately filled the couple with excitement, so they happily set off in that direction. Just as Ida had said, the scenery along the way was truly charming. Their mood quickly improved as they enjoyed the refreshing surroundings. The two decided to relax and have some fun together, but just as they were getting close, three troublemakers suddenly appeared out of nowhere. They were holding hunting rifles.
Like a peach.
Their disturbing behavior made Mike lose his patience. He immediately ordered Daryl to hand over the pants. Reluctantly, Daryl returned the pants to Mike. After getting dressed, Cheryl prepared to leave, but the men stepped forward and blocked their path. It seemed they had no intention of letting Mike and Cheryl go so easily. Then they pulled out a bottle of strong liquor and forced Mike to take a drink. Mike just wanted to leave as quickly as possible, so he reluctantly took a sip. To his surprise, they then demanded that he buy the bottle at an outrageous price. Seeing the hunting rifle in Daryl's hands, Mike had no choice but to reach into his bag for money. But when he noticed the pistol inside his bag, another idea crossed his mind. Cheryl did not want things to escalate. After her reminder, Mike put the gun back. He handed over the money obediently. Fortunately, the men did not cause any further trouble and quickly left. After this unpleasant encounter, the couple had completely lost their mood. Cheryl worried that Mike carrying a gun might lead to bigger problems. She asked Mike to throw away all the bullets. Although Mike was reluctant, he still followed her advice and tossed the bullets into the water. At that moment, a park ranger named Clyde suddenly appeared. Breaking the slightly awkward atmosphere, Clyde told them that there was a mountain peak nearby that was perfect for camping. Soon the couple arrived at the top of the mountain. The wide view and beautiful scenery instantly made them forget about the earlier trouble. But deep in the forest, a pair of sinister eyes was watching them closely. When night fell, the couple tried to make up for the ruined mood from earlier in the day. They began sharing a quiet and intimate moment. Because they were so focused on each other, they did not notice the shadow that appeared outside their tent. Early the next morning, after an exhausting night, Cheryl decided to go to the river for a bath, but a stranger was already standing nearby, staring at her from a distance. Her scream woke Mike instantly. Realizing something was wrong, he rushed toward the river, but by the time he arrived, Cheryl was already gone. Only the familiar necklace remained behind. Suddenly, a gunshot echoed from the forest behind him. Mike ran toward the sound without hesitation. In his rush, he tripped over a wooden stick and fell to the ground. A branch stabbed into his arm. Gritting his teeth, he pulled the branch out. At that moment, Mike heard voices nearby. When he ran over to look, he saw the same two troublemakers who had taken his money earlier. Daryl was even holding Cheryl's towel. Remembering how Daryl had behaved toward Cheryl before, Mike instantly concluded that they must have taken her. But Daryl looked completely confused. He insisted that he had never seen Cheryl. However, Mike had already been tricked by them once and did not believe a single word. When Daryl realized Mike might actually shoot him, he immediately backed down. He explained that he had simply found the towel and begged Mike not to hurt him. At that moment, Mike only wanted to find his girlfriend as quickly as possible, so he decided to let Daryl go. But Daryl quietly pulled out a knife behind his back and began provoking Mike with taunting words. Mike soon ran back to the campsite, but when he arrived, he was shocked to find that all of their belongings were gone. With no other choice, he returned to the forest to continue searching for Cheryl. Just as he stopped to bandage his wound, a few drops of blood suddenly fell onto him. Mike looked up and saw a dead deer hanging above. Instinctively, he stepped back, but suddenly a trap snapped shut around his leg. Mike struggled desperately to pry open the trap, but it was impossible. Just as he was losing hope, Ida appeared once again, in his fading consciousness. Mike heard her calling his name. When Mike opened his eyes again, he found himself inside Ida's house. Ida kindly helped treat his injuries. During their conversation, she learned that Cheryl had disappeared. Ida was about to call the police to report it, but at that moment, urgent knocking suddenly sounded at the door. It was Brody, the leader of the troublemakers. Brody asked Ida if she had seen a strange man. Mike had injured Daryl's head, and he wanted revenge for him. Fortunately, Ida did not allow Brody inside. She made up an excuse and quickly sent him away. Afterward, Ida brought Mike a bowl of herbal soup. She casually called out Mike's name. This made Mike suspicious. He had never introduced himself to her, unless Ida had seen his identification somehow. Realizing something was wrong, Mike suddenly knocked the bowl of soup over. Limping, he tried to reach the phone to call the police, but now that she was exposed, Ida dropped her friendly act. She grabbed a weapon nearby and confronted Mike. However, the difference in strength between them was obvious. She was no match for Mike. Just as Mike entered the room and tried to call the police, he discovered that the cordless phone was nothing more than a decoration. Furious, Mike slammed it onto the floor. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly realized that the floor beneath him sounded hollow. Mike quickly pulled away the carpet, and a hidden trapdoor appeared before his eyes. He followed the stairs down into the basement. What he saw inside left him completely shocked. The jars and containers on the shelves were filled with baby embryos. Mike opened a second hidden door and walked down a dark and narrow corridor. There he saw Cheryl. At that moment, Cheryl was tightly bound. Mike quickly found a knife and began cutting the ropes to free her. With Mike doing everything he could to hold their captor back, Cheryl managed to escape from the basement, but the badly injured Mike was no match for Deacon. Soon after, Deacon chased Cheryl out of the cabin. When Cheryl saw Clyde, the tension in her body finally began to ease. However, just as Clyde was trying to calm Cheryl down, Deacon quietly appeared behind them. Strangely enough, Clyde showed no surprise at all. He did not try to arrest Deacon. Only then did the truth become clear. They were working together. Seeing this, Cheryl tried to run, but it was already too late. When she woke up again, Cheryl found herself at a wedding ceremony, and the person she was being married to was Mike. What exactly was going on? It turned out that Ida and Clyde had been married for many years. Unfortunately, they never had any children. Although Ida was able to become pregnant, she had never been able to carry a baby to birth. Every pregnancy had ended before the child could be born, so the couple planned to use Cheryl's body to have a child for them. Cheryl believed Ida had completely lost her mind. When Mike was brought in, Cheryl was tied down on a table. After hearing Ida's demand, Mike found the idea absolutely ridiculous. However, Mike had no intention of letting them get what they wanted. If Cheryl became pregnant, he would lose his value to them. They would most likely get rid of him afterward. Besides, Mike did not want his child to grow up around people like them. Because Mike refused to cooperate, he was hung up once again. Deacon picked up a torture tool. At the same time, Ida tried to intimidate Cheryl. She cut off one of Cheryl's fingers with a knife. Both of them cried out in pain at the same moment. Early the next morning, Clyde and the others came to check on the situation. When Clyde saw that their plans still had not succeeded, he was filled with frustration. But just then, his walkie-talkie suddenly started making noise. Ida quickly covered Cheryl's mouth. Deacon dragged Mike outside. It turned out that after the two of them had lost contact, both of their parents became extremely worried. They contacted the local police and asked Clyde to help search for them. At the same time, a female police officer who received the report arrived at the park to investigate. At first, The group of troublemakers did not take the situation seriously, but when the officer told Brody that the families were offering a large reward for information, Brody's eyes immediately lit up. Meanwhile, Ida and the others continued tormenting Mike, hoping he would eventually give in. Ida pressed a heated branding iron against Mike, causing him to cry out in pain. Even so, Mike still refused to surrender. He even mocked them with his words, saying that Ida and Clyde did not deserve to have a child. That sentence struck directly at Ida's deepest pain. She completely lost control and repeatedly stabbed at Mike's wounds. She even declared that she would hand Cheryl over to Deacon. All she wanted was a child. Seeing that Ida was about to harm Cheryl, Mike finally gave in, but at that moment, Cheryl suddenly burst into laughter. It turned out that Cheryl was already pregnant. She was 6 weeks along. Hearing this, Ida felt as if the sky had collapsed around her. She was furious beyond control. She wanted to destroy the woman she believed had ruined everything. Seeing the situation spiral out of control, Clyde quickly stepped forward to stop her. But just then, a noise came from upstairs. It turned out that the two troublemakers, blinded by the promise of reward money, had tracked them down. They were convinced that Mike and Cheryl were being held there. After hearing the noise, Clyde rushed outside to check. Mike took the opportunity to collapse onto the floor, trying to use a small knife nearby to cut himself free. Meanwhile, the troublemakers outside discovered the entrance to the basement. One of them shouted down into the darkness. When Mike heard a voice, he immediately cried out for help. At the same time, Brody walked into the room, following the hidden entrance. He quickly made his way into the basement, but when he saw the babies inside the jars, the lights suddenly went out. Before he could react, the lights flickered back on. The deaths of the two troublemakers made Clyde realize that because of the reward, more and more people would soon come searching here. He had to silence them. However, while the couple was busy burying the bodies, Mike had already managed to untie himself. At the same time, after finishing the burial, Ida returned to the basement, but the moment she stepped inside, she saw Clyde collapsed on the ground. Ida held Clyde and cried in despair. Afterward, the two supported each other as they tried to leave, but Mike's leg injury was far too serious, so he told Cheryl to go find a phone for help. Cheryl immediately ran up to the main floor. Sure enough, she quickly spotted the phone. At the same time, the female police officer was about to finish her shift. Suddenly, she heard a faint cry for help coming through the phone line. Just as she was about to answer, Deacon appeared behind Cheryl. Cheryl seized the moment and ran toward the basement entrance. She shouted loudly for her boyfriend. When Mike heard her voice, he forced himself to grab a long knife and prepared to fight. At that moment, Deacon chased after her. Outside, a violent storm had already begun. Lightning flashed across the sky. When Cheryl saw the strong liquor nearby, an idea suddenly came to her mind. She grabbed a lighter in the rain and climbed onto the roof. Deacon quickly followed her. Seeing him approach, Cheryl lit the liquor and threw it toward him. Deacon was instantly engulfed in flames. The fire spread rapidly across his body. At that moment, Mike finally managed to crawl out of the basement. The two of them embraced each other tightly in relief. But the very next second, Ida, who had not completely died, suddenly moved again.
You did it. All right, you saved me. Okay. Put pressure on this, okay? Yes.
By now, Mike was already barely holding on, unwilling to give up. Cheryl quickly called for help. 1 year later, their baby was safely born. Mike had also survived the terrible ordeal. They believed their future would finally be peaceful, but suddenly, a sickle appeared outside the window. Could it be him?